propaganda project presentation. My name is Braden Govea. I'm currently a graduate student at Vanderbilt University. My project is titled Caption Contest in Creativity. And in this presentation, we'll cover a number of things. First, I will present how I discovered this idea and the motivation behind it, and the problems that I was encountering in my class, and then a different strategy, which is this presentation here of a project. I'm also going to cover the material that's available to use on the internet, the task of collecting and voting in class, different ways of doing that with your students if you want to vote in class. Also, I'm including a number of examples from my class, and at the end, before concluding, I will discuss the appropriate levels that this activity can be used for and why there might be multiple levels available. When I started thinking about this activity, I was thinking of how to make material for my class, for my students, that was both authentic and original. This comes to mind because many times my students in their Spanish classes would have an assignment that says, imagine that you're studying abroad in Spain, write an email to a friend back home and tell him or her what your experiences is like, and don't forget to mention the food and the town and the family you're living with. And so every student would write the same thing. It'd all be authentic because it would come from them, but it wouldn't be very original because it seems like every other student wrote the same thing. They would write, hi, I'm doing great, the school's fun, the city is nice, and the family is great too. And then they would end. And I think every group started to notice that although their answers were authentic because they were producing content out of their own minds, it wasn't original in the sense that everybody else was saying the very same thing. And I wanted to fix that. And so in this image right here, I have under background and motivation, the words authentic content doesn't always equate original content. And that was the motivation for thinking of this project. Another strategy is what I'm proposing here, and is that it takes the New Yorker caption contests. I'm not suggesting that my students submit their captions in a foreign language or that they even submit anything, but that they access or look up on Google past captions. And it's best if these captions don't already have a caption in English, because it does change the way they approach this text. And if they find in Google photos like this one I'm showing that doesn't have a caption, they're free to think of their own in the target language. And it really gets really creative in class when you have a number of groups working in groups of 2 or groups of 3 or even groups of 4 or even one-on-one. Students doing this all by themselves. There's a lot of ways they can do this, and it's really makes them think critically, not so much critically, but creatively and authentically, both those words, in the target language. And it's very interesting. I have some examples from my class. Here is just an example. Many of us have seen maybe the New Yorker before. They're very common. This is a classic one that I've always enjoyed seeing in English. Have you tried icing it? It's wonderful because of the play on words. And I've used this in class without showing the have you tried icing it. And the students come up with very funny things in Spanish. This is one that I've used in my class, and these are 3 examples from the actual New Yorker magazine to show you quickly what they do, what is done in English. The very last one by Trish from Madison, Wisconsin says, seems like you have problems letting go. I like it when my students can get to this level in the target language when they can use play on words. Letting go as in a relationship or emotional sense, and here as in letting go as if falling off of a branch in the fall. And sometimes this happens at intermediate levels and even below sometimes. And it's interesting. It's good to show your students, maybe if you want, famous characters struggling to do this in English. When they can see famous characters or actors doing the same thing that they're about to do in Spanish, they can approach this on a lighter level and relax and laugh and be creative and be comfortable. This is not easy, and they might identify with these people that they see on TV, as they laugh and struggle and just throw things out there and try and make something unique or funny or just that works. And it's really good to do in the target language, I found. If you want, you can have your students submit their caption on Twitter. You can tweet this to your students with a school or a work Twitter account, and which I have in my class, for example, and then they can retweet back to you using a specific hashtag their own caption. So you can have, if you have 10 groups in your class, you can have 10 tweets with the same hashtag, same image, but with unique captions, and then you can look at them on the screen with your students together. This is an example of what a hashtag could look like. Gouveia span 2203 semana 4. These are other hashtag ideas. You could use a different hashtag for every week or every time you do this in your class. And you can vote. You can vote on the screen. You can vote in hand. On the left side here of the screen, I have in-class hand count. Most of my students don't have a problem voting out loud for their and visually for their favorite tweet, or the favorite caption, I guess I should say. Or you could use note cards in class, which is anonymous, or you could even use polling websites in class or as homework. And that way the students don't have to know who's voting for whom. I wanted to include a couple student examples in here from my intermediate Spanish class. This one is a great example of how this activity can be applied to any level of Spanish. This would work. This is from my intermediate Spanish class, but I feel that this sentence, I need more space in English, is how you translate this, would work even at the very basic levels. If you know how to say I need more space, and on Spanish it works kind of the same way in English. And I think it's a very funny caption for a Spanish student, to use a play on words as far as space and how maybe the spaceman is feeling that someone's invading his space. I think it's very creative, and it's a good play on words that I like to see my students get to. Here's another example that I've used in class. 3 examples on the right side I've included that show what students tried to do. On the very top, the first example has to do with a Spanish play on words, to fall, like the leaf is falling to the ground, and caerme bien or caerse bien, which means it's using the same verb to fall, but making it reflexive in this way. It's used in Spanish to say I don't get along very well, or to feel even comfortable with. It's better to think of it as to not get along well. And so to say I don't get along well with you and I'm falling works in this context. They could use the same verb, use 2 different ways to describe this image. A really interesting play on words that my students used before with this image was ojear, the second example I have on the right. Ojear is a verb that means to flip through something like a book, or to leaf through. Because hoja is leaf in Spanish, and they used ojear, which uses that word in it as a verb. Very interesting. My favorite example, though, is the last example, ojalá, which has the word hoja in it. So it's not spelled the same way. It doesn't have an H like the noun leaf has, hoja with an H. But ojalá means I hope or I wish, or and they use it saying something. I think the example was, may we meet on the ground or something. Maybe we get together soon again or something. But they use the word hoja in that sentence, and this is the level of creativity and wordplay that I would like my students to get to. It's not necessary that students be at a very advanced levels, as in this example right here. I need more space. You could use these same images for 4 different levels, and you'll get different examples in creativity. And I think it's very interesting to see how students use these. And that's what I wanted to say about appropriate levels. It's good for all levels. It just, all it changes from one level to the next is maybe the complexity, the wordplay, and the wittiness. And it's interesting to see students try and do these things in the target language. And I hope this has been useful for you, and thank you very much.